The day had started like any other in the small suburban town. The sun was shining softly through the windows of the local store, casting warm patterns on the shiny floors. Inside, the store buzzed with the usual mix of people: parents pushing shopping carts, teenagers wandering the aisles, and the occasional elderly person taking their time to examine each item. It was a normal day, quiet and unremarkable, until a small boy walked in with a light step and wide, curious eyes. He wasn't alone. A younger sibling clung to his hand, eyes full of excitement, scanning the rows of brightly packaged goods and colorful displays. The boy had always loved coming to this store. It wasn't just a place to buy things, it was an adventure. Every visit was a chance to discover something new, whether it was a chocolate bar with a funny name, a small toy tucked between shelves, or just the bright, colorful packaging that caught his attention. He walked slowly, looking from one aisle to the next, careful not to knock anything over. But children have a way of being caught up in their own world, and sometimes accidents happen, no matter how careful they try to be. As he reached for a box of cereal on a higher shelf, his little brother tugged on his sleeve. In that small moment of distraction, the boy's hand brushed against a stack of cans on the lower shelf. A couple of them wobbled dangerously and then fell to the floor with a loud crash. The noise echoed through the store, causing heads to turn. The boy's heart skipped a beat. He immediately bent down to pick up the cans, his face flushing red with embarrassment. At that moment, the store manager appeared. She was known among the staff and regular customers as strict and quick to react. Today, her expression was sharp, her eyes scanning the scene with a mixture of irritation and suspicion. "What do you think you're doing?" she barked, her voice cutting through the soft hum of conversation in the store. The boy froze. He looked up at her, unsure how to respond. "I didn't mean to," he stammered, his small hand still clutching the fallen cans. The manager stepped closer, her face tightening. "You're making a mess. Do you even know how to behave in a store?" Her voice carried an edge that made several customers glance over, some frowning at the harshness, others shifting uncomfortably in their shoes. The boy's heart pounded. He had never been spoken to like this before, not in such a public, angry way. His little brother whimpered softly beside him, sensing the tension but not fully understanding it. Before he could explain further, the manager's hand shot out and smacked him sharply on the shoulder. The sudden contact made him stumble slightly, a sharp sting running through his body. The boy's eyes widened in shock and pain. He opened his mouth to cry out, but words failed him. He felt frozen, humiliated, and frightened all at once. The surrounding customers shifted uncomfortably. Some whispered among themselves, unsure if they should intervene, while others looked away, pretending not to notice. The boy dropped the cans he had been holding, and they rolled across the floor. He looked down, trying to make sense of what had just happened. He had never expected this. He had been raised to respect authority, to behave politely, but he had never learned how to react when someone in power used that authority to hurt him. His cheeks burned, not just from the physical sting, but from the sudden weight of embarrassment. He could feel eyes on him, some curious, some judging, and it made him feel even smaller. Meanwhile, the manager straightened up, clearly satisfied with herself, though there was a hint of tension in her stance. She looked around at the watching customers as if seeking validation, and then back at the boy. "I hope you've learned your lesson," she said sharply. The boy didn't respond. He just lowered his head and tried to shrink into himself, wishing the floor would open up and swallow him whole. At that moment, a soft voice called out from the entrance. "Is everything okay in here?" It was calm but carried an authority that made people pause. The boy's heart skipped again, this time with a flicker of hope. He turned his head slightly, and his eyes met those of his mother standing in the doorway. She had been nearby running errands when she heard from a friend that her child might need help. Now, seeing him standing there, shoulders hunched and eyes wide, she felt a rush of concern. She walked quickly but steadily towards him, her presence immediately drawing the attention of the store. People turned to watch as she moved with purpose, her eyes fixed on the manager and her child. The boy's little brother clung to his mother's leg, sensing safety in her presence. For the first time since entering the store, he felt a little relief wash over him. The manager, noticing the approaching woman, straightened even more. She assumed it was a typical parent, perhaps a friend, maybe even a neighbor coming to lecture the boy about some minor misbehavior. She didn't realize, not yet, who this woman really was. She didn't know that the balance of power in the room was about to shift in a way she could never have imagined. The mother reached her son and crouched down to his level. She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder and asked softly, "Are you okay?" Her voice was soothing, full of care and warmth. The boy nodded quickly, his voice barely audible. "I'm fine," he murmured, though his voice wavered. He wanted to be brave, wanted to show he could handle this, but the sting of the manager's hand still throbbed in his shoulder. The manager stepped closer, her tone attempting to regain authority. "Your son just caused a mess and—" She started, only to be interrupted by the mother, whose voice had subtly shifted, carrying a quiet strength that demanded attention. "Excuse me," she said, her tone calm but firm. "I'd like to hear exactly what happened here." The manager blinked, slightly thrown off by the calm authority in her voice. She cleared her throat and began to explain, repeating the story of the supposed misbehavior. Her words were precise, but the confidence she carried when talking to the boy faltered slightly under the mother's steady gaze. She assumed she could justify her actions and maybe even intimidate this parent into backing her up. She had no idea the world she thought she controlled was about to turn upside down. The boy's mother listened quietly, never interrupting, never raising her voice. She gave the boy a reassuring squeeze on the shoulder, letting him know silently that he was safe and that she would handle everything. The surrounding customers watched in growing curiosity, sensing a confrontation but unsure how it would unfold. The air felt tense, thick with anticipation. Then came the moment that would leave everyone speechless. The mother, still calm, finally spoke, her words carrying weight beyond the immediate scene. "I am the CEO of this company," she said, and the room seemed to freeze. The manager's face drained of color. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The customers, now understanding the significance, gasped softly. The boy's eyes widened in awe. He had known his mother was powerful in her own right, but he had never imagined the magnitude of her authority. For the manager, the shock was immediate. The confidence she had carried moments ago dissolved entirely. She had acted with arrogance, believing herself to be in control, and now she realized she was completely powerless in that moment. The air around her seemed heavier, charged with the collective realization of her mistake. She looked from the mother to the boy, then back to the mother, unable to form any defense. The boy felt a surge of relief and pride. Relief because the person who had hurt him would now be held accountable. Pride because his mother had arrived not just as a parent, but as someone whose presence commanded respect and authority. For the first time that day, he felt that the humiliation, the fear, and the embarrassment might finally begin to fade. As the mother stood, calm and composed, the boy knew that the story was far from over, but for now he felt protected. The other customers began whispering quietly, sharing their surprise and amazement at the turn of events. Some nodded in approval, others looked with wide eyes at the manager, who now seemed smaller and uncertain, no longer the person who had ruled the space moments ago. The boy's little brother stayed close to their mother, sensing that the danger had passed. The boy himself straightened slightly, still shaken, but reassured by his mother's presence. He realized that sometimes people in positions of authority could be wrong, and sometimes it took courage and power to stand up for what was right. In that quiet, tense moment, the store held its collective breath. The ordinary day had shifted into something extraordinary. The boy's life, in a small but significant way, had changed. He had learned about injustice, about fear, and most importantly, about the protection and strength of a parent who would go to any length to defend her child. And so, the day continued, but nothing would be quite the same in that store again. The store seemed quieter now, but the tension in the air was unmistakable. The boy's mother stood beside him, her posture calm but commanding, as if the space around her had shifted entirely. Customers who had been shopping normally now paused, their attention drawn to the unfolding scene. Whispers traveled softly from one corner to another, people exchanging glances and murmurs, unable to fully believe what had just happened. The manager, once confident and strict, now seemed unsure where to look or what to say. She had expected a scolding parent, maybe a complaint, perhaps even a mild argument, but what she faced instead was something far beyond her anticipation. The boy's little brother clung to their mother's hand, looking up at her with wide, trusting eyes. He didn't understand all the details, but he knew that his mother's presence had changed everything. Her calm confidence made him feel safe, even though the incident with the manager had left him scared and unsettled. He tugged gently at her sleeve and she responded with a reassuring smile, squeezing his hand gently before shifting her attention back to her older son. The boy looked up at her, still feeling the sting of humiliation and confusion. His thoughts were a tangle of fear, embarrassment, and relief. He had been frightened and unsure of how to react when the manager had smacked him, and now he was both amazed and comforted by the strength of his mother. He wanted to say something, to express the mix of emotions he felt, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he simply stood close, silently leaning on her for support. The manager, meanwhile, struggled to regain her composure. She had spent years managing the store, enforcing rules and asserting her authority, but now in front of her was someone whose authority dwarfed her own. She tried to speak, her voice trembling slightly, but it lacked the sharp confidence she had relied upon moments before. "I was just trying to," she began, faltering as she searched for the right words. Her eyes darted around the store, noticing the customers watching her, and for the first time she realized just how exposed she was. The mother tilted her head slightly, listening, but did not interrupt. She allowed the manager to speak, giving her the chance to explain, but her calm demeanor made it clear that she was not impressed by excuses or justification. She had heard the situation, and she knew exactly what had happened. The manager's words felt small in comparison to the quiet, commanding presence of the woman standing before her. "I understand accidents happen," the mother finally said, her voice steady and measured. "But hitting a child is never acceptable. Not in this store, not in this company, and certainly not in any place where respect and professionalism are expected." Her words were simple, but they carried a weight that made the manager falter. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it, realizing that there was no defense that would sound reasonable in this context. The boy watched the interaction with a mixture of awe and relief. He felt the tension in his chest begin to ease, though the embarrassment and fear had not entirely disappeared. Seeing his mother handle the situation with such calm authority gave him a new understanding of her strength. He had always known she was important, but witnessing her assert control over the situation in real time was something entirely different. It filled him with a sense of pride and reassurance that he had never experienced before. The manager took a small step back, suddenly aware of the customers who were quietly observing everything. Some shook their heads in disapproval, while others whispered softly to each other, clearly shocked by what they had witnessed. The atmosphere in the store had shifted completely. What had begun as a simple confrontation over a small accident had now become a scene of accountability and justice. The mother crouched slightly to bring herself to the boy's level. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. He nodded, his voice barely audible. "I'm okay now," he said, his words shaky but true. He felt comforted, knowing that he was no longer alone and that the person who had hurt him would face the consequences of her actions. Meanwhile, the manager's face showed a mix of fear and disbelief. She had always prided herself on maintaining control, on enforcing rules and discipline, and yet here she was, completely powerless. The realization hit her hard. She had acted rashly, relying on authority that she assumed gave her the right to act without consequence, and now she faced the weight of accountability in the most direct and undeniable way. The mother straightened, her eyes scanning the store, taking in the customers, the staff, and the general scene. She wanted to make sure that everyone understood that this was not just a private family matter. The message was clear. Mistreatment of any child, any person in this store or any part of the company would not be tolerated. The store manager, for all her confidence and authority, was suddenly the subject of scrutiny, and the power dynamic had completely shifted. The boy's little brother, sensing the change in atmosphere, held tightly to his mother's hand. He looked up at her with trust and admiration, not fully understanding the complexities of the situation, but knowing instinctively that she was protecting them. The boy standing beside her felt a deep sense of relief wash over him. He realized that sometimes fear and humiliation could be countered by courage and authority. In that moment, he understood that having someone strong and just on your side could change everything. The mother took a slow, deliberate step toward the manager. Her presence alone seemed to demand attention, and she spoke with a calm, unwavering tone. "I will be addressing this situation fully," she said. "This kind of behavior is not acceptable. It goes against the values of this company, and it will not be ignored. Her words were simple, but the authority behind them was undeniable. The manager's attempts to form a response faltered, her previous confidence completely eroded by the gravity of the situation. The surrounding customers watched in silent awe. Some nodded in agreement with the mother's statements. Others whispered to each other about the shocking turn of events. The atmosphere in the store had transformed from casual shopping to a scene of accountability, tension, and revelation. The boy's heart swelled with relief. He felt that for the first time that day justice was being recognized, and that the person who had hurt him would no longer hold power over him. The mother turned to the boy, giving him a reassuring smile. "You were brave," she said softly. "It's not easy to stand there when someone treats you unfairly. I'm proud of you for staying calm and for letting me help." The boy felt a surge of pride mixed with lingering nervousness. He had been frightened and embarrassed, but now he felt supported, safe, and understood. The manager, on the other hand, stood frozen. Her face showed a mixture of fear, disbelief, and shame. She had expected resistance from a parent, perhaps some mild confrontation, but she had never imagined the parent would be someone with authority that completely overshadowed her own. The reality of her actions hit her hard, and she realized that there would be consequences, both immediate and far-reaching. The mother's presence was not just about authority, it was about protection, guidance, and justice. She was showing everyone in the store that no one, regardless of their position, had the right to hurt a child or act with unprovoked aggression. The boy watched her, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. In that moment, he understood the true power of a parent who not only loves but also knows how to stand up for what is right. The store staff began to murmur quietly among themselves, some glancing nervously at the manager, others at the mother and her children. The balance of power in the store had completely shifted. The manager, once the figure of authority, now seemed small and uncertain, aware that her actions had been wrong and that she would be held accountable. The boy's little brother, still holding tightly to their mother's hand, seemed to sense that the danger had passed. He felt the tension ease slightly, though the events of the day would remain in his memory for a long time. The older boy, standing beside his mother, felt a mix of relief and pride. Relief that he was safe and pride that his mother had intervened with such calm strength. The mother finally straightened, her eyes sweeping across the store. She gave a small nod, acknowledging the presence of the staff and customers. "This situation will be handled appropriately," she said. "Everyone deserves respect, and no one should ever be treated unfairly or hurt in this way." Her voice carried clearly, leaving no room for misunderstanding. The manager, now fully aware of the implications of her actions, could only nod silently. The authority she had wielded moments ago was gone, replaced by the undeniable presence of the mother, whose calm strength had transformed the entire scene. The boy's heart lifted slightly, realizing that the worst of the incident was over, and that fairness and protection were being restored. As the mother guided her children gently toward the exit, she continued to reassure them. "It's okay," she said softly. "You did nothing wrong. Sometimes people act out of anger or frustration, and it's important to stay calm and let the right people handle it." The boys nodded, feeling comforted by her words and the way she had stood up for them. The store would never forget that day. What began as a simple accident had turned into a lesson in accountability, authority, and the importance of standing up for what is right. The boy would remember not only the fear he felt, but also the strength and protection his mother had shown. He learned in a deeply personal way that courage and calm authority could transform even the most frightening situations. And so, the incident settled into memory, a story that would be recounted many times. A moment of shock turned into a powerful lesson. The boy and his brother left the store safe and reassured, carrying with them the knowledge that they were protected, loved, and that injustice could be met with calm and decisive action. The store had returned to a semblance of calm, but the tension still lingered in the air. People moved slowly, some glancing toward the spot where the incident had occurred, others whispering quietly to one another. The boy walked beside his mother, still holding her hand tightly. His heart had begun to settle, though the sting on his shoulder remained a sharp reminder of what had happened. He felt a mixture of relief and anxiety, relief because his mother was there, and anxiety because the events were far from over. The manager, meanwhile, stood frozen behind the counter, trying to gather her thoughts. She had faced the unexpected authority of the boy's mother and realized that everything she thought she controlled had slipped away in an instant. Her earlier confidence, built on years of managing the store and enforcing rules, had evaporated. She had acted out of anger, believing she was right. And now she faced the uncomfortable truth that her actions were completely unacceptable. She shifted nervously, glancing at the staff who avoided eye contact, sensing the impending confrontation. The mother guided her children toward a quieter corner of the store. She crouched down again to speak with the boy, her voice gentle but firm. "Do you remember what I told you earlier?" she asked, looking into his eyes. "About staying calm and letting me handle things?" The boy nodded, feeling reassured. "Yes, Mom," he whispered. "I did my best." He was trying to be brave to show that he could handle the situation, but she shook her head softly and smiled. "You did more than your best," she said. "You stayed composed even when it was really scary. That's something to be proud of." The boy's little brother, still holding her other hand, watched the interaction silently. He didn't fully understand all the details, but he felt the safety and reassurance radiating from his mother. Her calm presence was like a shield, making him feel secure despite the chaos that had just unfolded. The store, once a place of normal shopping, now felt charged with a new energy, one of respect, authority, and accountability. Meanwhile, the manager finally found her voice, though it trembled slightly. I was just trying to enforce the rules," she said. Her eyes flicked nervously to the mother, hoping for some understanding or forgiveness but finding none. The mother listened quietly, letting the words hang in the air without interruption. Her calm composure made the manager feel increasingly small, highlighting the disparity in authority and moral clarity between them. "I understand that rules are important," the mother finally said, her voice steady and unwavering. "But hitting a child is never the right way to enforce them. Rules should protect people and guide behavior, not harm or humiliate anyone. What you did was wrong, and it will be addressed." Her words carried weight, and the manager's shoulders slumped slightly as the truth settled in. She had misjudged the situation entirely and acted out of frustration rather than reason. The boy's heart swelled with a mix of pride and relief. Seeing his mother stand so calmly yet firmly against the manager's aggression filled him with a sense of security he had never experienced before. He realized that sometimes people in positions of authority might act wrongly, and it takes courage and presence of mind to confront that wrongdoing. He glanced up at his mother, silently thanking her for being there, for protecting him, and for showing him what it meant to stand up for what is right. The mother's attention then shifted to the surrounding staff and customers. She wanted everyone present to understand that this was not merely a private matter, but a lesson in accountability. "Everyone here should know," she said, her tone firm but not harsh, "that physical aggression, especially against children, will never be tolerated. Respect and professionalism are not optional, they are expected." The words resonated through the store, quieting the murmurs and capturing the attention of all present. The manager's face turned pale as the weight of the mother's authority and the truth of her actions sank in. She realized that this was not just a personal confrontation, but a reflection on her professional conduct. The authority she had relied upon, built over years of managing the store, suddenly felt insignificant in the face of the mother's calm command and moral clarity. For the first time, she felt the full impact of her actions, the humiliation she had caused, the fear she had inflicted, and the accountability that was now unavoidable. The boy's little brother, sensing the shift, relaxed slightly but remained close to their mother. He looked up at her with admiration, understanding intuitively that she had turned a frightening situation into one where justice and protection prevailed. The older boy standing beside her felt a growing sense of pride. He had been scared, embarrassed, and uncertain, but now he realized that the fear could be confronted, and that there were people who would stand up for what was right, no matter the circumstances. The mother continued to address the manager directly, her voice calm yet commanding. "You need to understand that your behavior was unacceptable," she said. "This is not just about following rules. It's about treating people with dignity and respect. You have a responsibility to ensure a safe and respectful environment for everyone, especially children." The manager swallowed hard, nodding slowly. She knew there was no excuse for what she had done. The surrounding customers were now fully attentive, some nodding in agreement, others whispering softly about the astonishing turn of events. The atmosphere in the store had shifted completely. What had begun as a simple misunderstanding over a small accident had transformed into a powerful lesson in accountability, authority, and moral courage. The boy felt a sense of awe at his mother's presence, realizing that she was not only protecting him but also teaching everyone in the store a lesson they would not soon forget. The mother crouched slightly again to speak with her son. "You did the right thing by staying calm," she said gently. "Sometimes when people act unfairly, our first instinct is to react in anger or fear. But staying calm, standing together and letting the right people handle it is often the best response. And that's exactly what you did." The boy nodded, feeling a sense of validation and pride. He had been scared, yes, but he had also acted wisely, and his mother acknowledged it. The manager, meanwhile, struggled to find words, her confidence shattered. She had thought herself in control, but now she realized the full extent of her misjudgment. Her actions, driven by frustration and misunderstanding, had put her in a position of accountability she could not escape. She glanced around at the staff, some of whom looked down, clearly aware of the gravity of the situation. The store, once a place of routine business, had become a stage where lessons in respect, fairness, and authority were being enacted in real time. The mother's voice cut through the quiet murmurs of the store once again. "I will be taking further steps to ensure that this situation is addressed fully," she said. "It is important that everyone understands the seriousness of this matter, and that measures are put in place to prevent it from happening again. This is not about punishment alone, it is about creating a culture of respect and care." Her words carried a weight that silenced any remaining whispers and focused everyone's attention. The boy's little brother, sensing the reassurance in his mother's tone, relaxed even more, still holding her hand but no longer clinging in fear. The older boy standing beside her felt a mixture of relief, pride, and understanding. He had learned in a deeply personal way that courage and authority could make a difference, and that injustice could be confronted without fear. He looked up at his mother with admiration, realizing that she had turned a frightening and humiliating experience into a moment of learning. Protection and empowerment, the manager finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I understand," she said. Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of realization. She knew that her actions had been wrong, that she had misused the authority she once wielded with confidence, and that she would have to face the consequences. For the first time, she felt the full impact of accountability, and it left her uncertain, humbled, and aware of the responsibility she had neglected. The mother nodded slowly, acknowledging the manager's admission, but not letting the moment lose its gravity. "Acknowledgement is a first step," she said calmly, "but action is required. You must ensure that this behavior does not happen again, and that every child, every person in this store is treated with respect and dignity." The manager nodded again, the weight of her failure pressing on her shoulders. As the reality of the situation settled fully in her mind, the boy, feeling the reassurance and strength of his mother, took a deep breath and relaxed slightly. He realized that while the sting of the manager's hand would linger, the emotional and moral support he had received was far more powerful. He had witnessed courage, authority, and justice in action, and it left a lasting impression on him. He knew that this experience, frightening as it had been, had taught him something invaluable about standing up, staying calm, and trusting the right people to intervene. The mother finally guided her children toward the exit, her hands firmly holding theirs. "It's okay now," she said softly. "The situation is being handled and you are safe. You have nothing to fear." The boys nodded, feeling the warmth of her protection and the strength of her presence. The store, once a place of ordinary shopping, had become a place of lesson and reflection, a moment that would remain in their memories for years to come. As they left, the customers and staff continued to process what had happened. The boy knew that the story would be retold, that the events of the day would linger in everyone's minds. He felt a sense of closure but also a sense of empowerment, knowing that fear and injustice could be met with calm authority and moral courage. And so, the day in the store, which had begun as ordinary and routine, had transformed into something extraordinary, a lesson in respect, justice, and the power of standing up for what is right. The boy and his brother walked beside their mother, feeling safe, protected, and proud, carrying with them a story they would never forget. The store had returned to a quiet hum, but the air still carried the weight of what had happened. The boy's mother stood in the middle of the store, calm yet firm, her presence filling the space. People moved around, resuming shopping slowly, but it was clear that everyone was paying attention. Even the store employees, who had grown accustomed to the manager's strict ways, now looked nervous and uncertain, aware that the events unfolding were extraordinary. The boy and his little brother stood close to their mother. The older boy's shoulder still throbbed slightly from the earlier incident, but the emotional sting had softened. He felt a sense of safety now, and the fear that had once gripped him was replaced by a quiet confidence. He realized that someone was standing up for him, not just as a parent, but as a leader, someone whose presence demanded respect. The younger boy clung lightly to his mother's hand, sensing the calm authority in her, and slowly began to relax. The manager, still behind the counter, tried to regain her composure. Her earlier confidence had been replaced by shock and uncertainty. She had acted quickly, without thinking, assuming that she had authority over the situation, but now she realized that she had overstepped, and the consequences were unfolding before her eyes. Every glance from her employees, every whisper from the customers reminded her that she was under scrutiny. She could no longer rely on fear or intimidation to maintain control. The mother's gaze swept across the store. She knew this was a moment that required careful handling. Her goal was not to shame anyone unnecessarily, but to address the wrongdoing firmly, ensure accountability, and protect her children. She spoke clearly, her voice calm yet resonant. "This kind of behavior is not acceptable," she said. "Physical aggression against a child will never be tolerated, no matter the circumstances. Everyone here should understand that safety and respect are the most important priorities." The employees shifted uneasily. Some nodded silently. Others exchanged quick glances, realizing that the standards they had once taken for granted were being reinforced in the strongest possible way. The manager's face, pale and strained, reflected the growing awareness of her mistake. She had misjudged the situation and acted out of anger rather than reason. Now she had to confront the reality that her actions were completely unacceptable and that she would face serious consequences. The mother turned slightly to address her children, crouching down so she could speak to the older boy at eye level. "I want you to know that you did the right thing by staying calm," she said gently. "Sometimes when someone acts unfairly, it can be very scary. But remaining composed and letting the right people handle the situation is often the best choice. You were brave, and I am proud of you." The boy nodded, a mixture of relief and pride washing over him. He had been terrified moments earlier, unsure of how to respond to the aggression, but now with his mother by his side, he realized that fear could be confronted and overcome. The younger brother, sensing the change in mood, relaxed slightly, still holding on to his mother's hand but no longer clinging in fear. The sense of safety and reassurance was tangible, filling the space around them. The mother shifted her attention back to the manager, her tone calm but unyielding. "You need to understand the seriousness of your actions," she said.
Hitting a child is never acceptable.
"Your role here is to ensure a safe and respectful environment, not to instill fear or punish unnecessarily. This behavior reflects poorly on you in the store, and it will be addressed appropriately." The manager opened her mouth to respond but found that no words came. She had spent years managing the store, asserting her authority and believing she could control every situation, but now she realized that authority without respect and fairness was meaningless. The calm, composed presence of the mother had completely overturned her sense of control, leaving her unsure of how to proceed. The mother's eyes scanned the staff, meeting each person's gaze with quiet authority. She wanted them to understand that this was not only about correcting a single mistake, but also about reinforcing a culture of respect and care. "Everyone here has a responsibility," she said. "You must ensure that every child, every customer, and every colleague is treated with dignity. Actions that cause harm or fear will not be tolerated. It is not just about rules, it is about how we treat one another." The employees nodded, some whispering softly to one another. The manager, realizing the depth of the moment, lowered her head slightly, acknowledging the truth of the words. She understood that her behavior had crossed a line, and that she could no longer rely on fear or authority alone. The incident would be addressed formally, and she would face the consequences of her actions. The boy's older brother, still standing close, felt a sense of reassurance. He had been scared, humiliated and unsure of what would happen next, but now he felt a growing sense of security. He watched his mother with admiration, realizing that her strength went far beyond her role as a parent. She was a leader, someone who could confront injustice calmly and effectively, protecting those who could not defend themselves. The mother turned back to the boys and smiled gently. "You are safe now," she said. "It's okay to feel scared, but it's important to remember that you did nothing wrong. The right people are handling the situation, and you can trust that it will be resolved fairly." The older boy nodded, feeling the tension ease slightly. The younger boy, still holding his mother's hand, felt the reassurance in her words and began to relax completely. The manager finally found her voice, though it was hesitant. I understand," she said. Her words were simple, but they reflected a deep realization. She had acted out of frustration and misunderstanding, and now she had to confront the consequences. For the first time, she felt the full weight of accountability pressing on her. The mother nodded. "Acknowledgement is the first step," she said, "but action is required. You must take steps to ensure this does not happen again, and that every child and every person in this store is treated with respect. This is about creating a safe and professional environment for everyone." Her tone was firm but fair, leaving no doubt about the seriousness of the matter. The surrounding customers watched silently, some nodding in agreement, others whispering softly to one another. The atmosphere in the store had shifted completely. What had begun as a simple incident over a small accident had transformed into a powerful lesson in accountability, responsibility, and moral courage. The mother's calm authority had not only protected her children, but had also made everyone in the store reconsider their understanding of respect, authority, and fairness. The mother then turned to the boys once more, crouching down to meet their eyes. "You handled this situation well," she said. "It's important to stay calm when someone acts unfairly. Fear and anger are natural, but knowing how to respond thoughtfully is a skill you are learning. I am proud of both of you." The older boy felt a surge of pride and relief, while the younger brother, still holding tightly to her hand, felt completely reassured. The manager, standing behind the counter, finally lowered her head, her face reflecting shame and realization. She had acted impulsively and allowed anger to dictate her actions. Now, under the calm scrutiny of the mother and the witnessing eyes of the staff and customers, she understood the magnitude of her mistake. The path forward would involve reflection, accountability, and corrective action. The mother addressed the manager one last time. "This will be handled appropriately by the company," she said. "You will face the necessary consequences, and steps will be taken to prevent this from happening again. It's not only about you. It's about setting a standard for everyone who works here and ensuring that respect is maintained at all times." The manager nodded slowly, understanding that there was no escaping the consequences. She had misused her authority, and now the process of accountability would unfold. The employees, some of whom had been silent observers, now realized the importance of upholding a culture of respect and professionalism. The boy's mother had not only protected her children, but had also set an example that would resonate long after the incident ended. The boys felt the reassurance and strength of their mother as she guided them toward the exit. "It's okay now," she said softly. "The situation is being addressed and you are safe. You did nothing wrong. Remember that standing calm and trusting the right people to handle things is powerful." The older boy nodded, feeling the weight of fear lift slightly. The younger brother, sensing the change in atmosphere, smiled faintly, feeling comforted and secure. As they left the store, the air seemed lighter. Customers resumed their shopping. Staff began their duties with a renewed understanding, and the manager faced the reality of her actions. The mother's presence had transformed the situation from one of fear and aggression into a lesson in accountability, authority, and respect. The boys walked beside her, feeling safe, protected, and proud. The events of the day had taught them valuable lessons about courage, fairness, and the power of standing up for what is right. The store, which had once been an ordinary place, had become the setting for a profound moment of learning and reflection, one that the boys would remember for years to come. The store had finally begun to return to its usual rhythm, but the energy was different now. It was quieter, more thoughtful, as if the events of the day had left a mark on everyone present. The boy and his little brother walked beside their mother, still holding her hands tightly. The older boy's shoulder throbbed a little from the earlier incident, but the emotional weight that had pressed on him all day had started to ease. He felt a sense of relief, a feeling that the fear and humiliation he had endured were slowly being replaced by security and pride. The mother walked steadily, her presence calm, yet commanding. People who had been watching the scene unfold moved aside to give her space, recognizing her authority even if they did not yet know the full story. Some of the staff glanced at one another, nodding subtly, as if acknowledging that a lesson had been delivered that none of them would soon forget. Even the manager who had caused so much tension now avoided eye contact, her expression a mixture of shame, disbelief, and acceptance. The older boy looked up at his mother. "Mom," he said quietly, "thank you for helping me. I was really scared." His voice was sincere and it carried a mix of vulnerability and gratitude. She smiled gently at him, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "I know you were scared," she said, "but being scared doesn't mean you're weak. It means you care, and it means you are aware of what is right and what is wrong. You stayed calm, and you trusted me to handle it. That takes courage, and I am very proud of you." The younger boy, sensing the reassurance in his mother's tone, began to relax more completely. His small hands clung to hers a little less tightly as he felt safe. He didn't fully understand all the details of what had happened, but he knew instinctively that his mother had taken care of everything. He looked around at the people in the store, some still watching quietly, and felt a sense of awe at the presence of his mother, whose calm strength seemed to change everything in the room. The manager, standing behind the counter, finally took a small step forward. She looked at the mother, then at the boys, and lowered her head slightly. She had no words to offer that could undo what had happened. The physical aggression, the anger, and the misunderstanding could not be erased with a simple apology. But the acknowledgement of wrongdoing, the acceptance of responsibility, was the first step in making things right. Her shoulders slumped slightly as she realized that her actions had consequences, both immediate and long-lasting. The mother addressed the manager calmly but firmly. "This situation will be handled fully by the company," she said. "There will be measures put in place to ensure that this does not happen again. Rules exist for a reason, but respect and professionalism are more important than anything else. You must remember that." The manager nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of the statement. There was no room for argument, no way to excuse the behavior. The consequences were real, and she had to accept them. The employees in the store began to carry on with their work, but there was a noticeable difference in their demeanor. They moved more carefully with a renewed awareness of how important respect, professionalism, and proper behavior were in the workplace. The customers, too, seemed affected by the scene they had witnessed. Some whispered quietly among themselves, sharing their astonishment at the mother's calm authority and the way she had handled a potentially volatile situation. Others simply shook their heads in disbelief, unable to fully comprehend the sudden turn of events. The boy looked around the store, taking in the reactions of the people around him. He felt a mixture of pride and relief. He had been humiliated, scared, and unsure of what to do, but now he understood that the situation had been corrected. He had witnessed fairness and justice firsthand, and he felt a growing sense of respect for his mother. He realized that courage was not always loud or aggressive. It could be calm, measured, and effective, creating change without chaos. The mother guided her children toward the exit, her hands holding theirs securely. "It's okay now," she said softly. "The situation has been handled and you are safe. You have nothing to fear." The boys nodded, feeling a sense of closure settle over them. The older boy felt the last remnants of fear lift slightly, replaced by a quiet pride. The younger boy, sensing the relief in the atmosphere, let go of the tension in his small shoulders and began to walk more freely, still close to his mother but no longer tense. As they walked out of the store, the mother glanced back briefly. She wanted to ensure that the staff understood that accountability and respect were not just words. They were actions that had consequences. She had handled the situation firmly and calmly, and she knew that the lesson would resonate long after they left. For the manager, the employees, and the observing customers, it was a moment that would not be forgotten, a powerful reminder of the importance of fairness, professionalism, and protecting those who cannot defend themselves. Outside, The sunlight felt warm and comforting. The boys took a deep breath, letting the fresh air fill their lungs. The older boy looked up at his mother with a sense of gratitude he could not fully express. "Mom," he said softly, "I think I understand now. You really know how to handle things." She smiled, squeezing his hand gently. "I do my best," she said. "But more importantly, I want you to learn that even when things are scary or unfair, staying calm and trusting the right people can make all the difference." The younger boy, sensing the calm and reassurance around him, let go of his mother's hand briefly to take a small step ahead. He turned back and smiled, feeling safe and cared for. The mother watched both her children, her heart full of love and pride. She had not only protected them in a difficult moment, but had also taught them an invaluable lesson about courage, justice, and moral clarity. Back inside the store, the manager faced the reality of her actions. She would have to answer for her behavior, accept consequences, and reflect on how she treated others in positions less powerful than herself. The employees watching this unfold would carry the lesson forward, understanding that authority comes with responsibility, and that disrespect or aggression could never be justified. The incident had changed the atmosphere of the store, leaving a lasting impression on everyone who had witnessed it. The boys walked to their car with their mother, feeling a mix of relief, pride, and understanding. The older boy felt that he had grown slightly in those few hours. He had faced fear, humiliation, and uncertainty, and he had survived it with his mother's guidance. He had seen the power of calm authority and moral courage firsthand. He realized that standing up for what is right did not always require anger or confrontation. It often required patience, presence, and clarity of action. The younger boy, still holding his mother's hand lightly, looked up at her with admiration. He had sensed the fear and confusion earlier, but now he understood that she had taken control and ensured their safety. He felt protected, loved, and reassured. The day's events had left a mark on him, a memory of courage, calm authority, and the importance of protecting those who are vulnerable. As they drove home, the boys reflected on what had happened. The older boy thought about the manager, the staff, and the customers who had witnessed everything. He realized that the lessons extended beyond their family. They were lessons for everyone about fairness, respect, and accountability. The younger boy, quietly observing his brother and mother, absorbed the sense of safety and authority that had shaped the day. The mother, glancing in the rearview mirror at her children, felt a quiet satisfaction. She had turned a frightening and humiliating incident into a moment of learning, protection, and empowerment. She had shown her children what it meant to handle difficult situations with calm authority, to protect the vulnerable, and to ensure that justice was served. The incident had been challenging, but it had also been an opportunity to teach valuable lessons that would stay with her children for a lifetime. By the time they arrived home, the tension of the day had begun to fade completely. The boys felt safe, loved, and reassured. They had experienced fear and confusion, but they had also witnessed courage, authority, and justice in action. The older boy, in particular, carried with him a new understanding of the power of calm and moral courage. The younger boy carried the reassurance of safety and protection, a knowledge that his mother would always be there to defend him. The events of the day would remain in their memories forever. A story of fear confronted, of justice delivered, and of the power of standing up for what is right. The mother had not only protected her children, but had also demonstrated to everyone present the